शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। गुकारस्त्वन्धकारो वै ऋकारस्त्वनिवर्तकः अन्धकारनिरोधित्वात् गुरुरित्यभिधीयते। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवागुंसस्तनूभिः वशेम देवहितं स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। So let's chant verses number 8, 9, 10, and then the 11th one that we will start today. Sabrahma sashivaha sendrasoksara paramaswarat sa eva vishnuhu sa pranaha sa kalo agnis sa chandramaha स एव सर्वं यद्भूतं यच्च भव्यं सनातनं ज्ञात्वा तं मृत्युमत्येति नान्यः पन्था विमुक्तये। सर्वभूतस्थमात्मानं सर्वभूतानि चात्मनि सम्पश्यन् ब्रह्म परमं याति नान्येन हेतुना। Okay, so let's start chanting verse number 11. So each half we will do twice. Atmanam aranim kritva pranavam chottaranim. Atmanam aranim kritva pranavam chottaranim. ज्ञाननिर्मथनाभ्यासात् पाशं दहति पंडितः निर्मथनाभ्यासात् पाशं दहति पंडितः ज्ञाननिर्मथनाभ्यासात् पाशं दहति पंडितः। Okay, so let's start with the review of the 11th verse of the Kaibaleopanishad. And this text on this verse by Swami Viditatmananda, I think is excellent, and I think I will follow the thoughts on this text very closely. So I do urge you to, after the class, review the text in the book itself, which is on page 136 on verse number 11. So Swamiji says that this is basically Mahavakya Vichara. Mahavakya Vichara, Mahavakya means the great sentence, the ultimate equation, as we were talking about in the earlier class. This is the ultimate equation. Ultimate equation means, what do you mean by ultimate? There are equations, but what is so ultimate about it? And what is so great about it? It's a great sentence you can look upon. This is called Tattvamasi. So, that thou art, that you are, is the equation, that is the sentence. And there is not the only one, there are many others. There are Mahavakyas all over the place. But what is ultimate and what is great about it? This needs to be thought about. So, it is ultimate and it is great because it fulfills the promise of our life. The ultimate promise of our life. This needs to be thought about and understood. Like, what is the goal of our life? Why are we here? What are we trying to accomplish? And in answering that question, the answer is that the goal of life, which is true for everybody, it's not as though my goal is different than your goal. Everybody has the same goal. We might display different aspects of it. We might get at it from a different standpoint. Somebody might want to make a lot of money. Somebody else wants to become a scholar. Somebody else becomes an artist. All those things are all separate and different. But the goal remains the same. And what is that goal? We want to be unconditionally happy. So the unconditionality of the happiness is the common goal. Because conditional happiness I will grudgingly accept, but only grudgingly. It's exactly like asking somebody, okay, do you want to be happy inside the home or outside the home? Do you want to be happy with people or without people? You want to be happy in the daytime or in the evening? So we say, what kind of a question is that? It doesn't make any sense. I want to be happy, period. Unconditionally. This is the common goal. And the Mahavakya, the great sentence, accomplishes that for us. This is why it is called the ultimate equation or the great sentence. Either description is okay. But the word ultimate and the great refers to the fact that it removes the final obstacle from us being unconditionally happy. And what this means, of course, is that it's not as though the equation is to be formulated. It is already formulated. It is already there. But what we need to do is to try to solve it. Why we need to solve it is because until we solve it, we don't accept it. You don't accept it. It's like, supposing you have an equation in front of you that says x squared plus y squared within parentheses divided by z to the power of 24 plus this, that, or the other. Very complicated kind of an equation equals 24 plus 26 equals 50 is the equation, where x is some value, y is some value, complicated elements to it, and so on. So that equation is already given to you, but you don't understand how that can be. Very much like if you tell your child, a small toddler, that, okay, tell me what the answer is. If this is true, 3 plus 2 equals 4 plus 1. And it's very should be obvious to us that at a certain point they don't understand this. They'll say, what? 3 plus 2 equals 4 plus 1? They might be able to understand 1 is equal to 1, 2 is equal to 2. But anytime you have some complication, that throws them off. But there comes a time where you say, of course, don't give me such simple equations to solve. Very similar to that is what is meant by a Mahavakya. So the word Maha means great. Vakya means a sentence. So we cannot see the equation until we think about it. Until we understand how to solve it. And so this is what the word vichara means. And I think for those of you that are in the Tuesday night class, we had analyzed the word vichara. Here Swami Maheswaranji had given a very beautiful example of this, the word vichara. So vichara means thinking. And thinking doesn't mean pure logic. Now, we had given this example in the Tuesday night class that vichara means a step-by-step instruction in order to reach a place which is not easy to describe. So like if you have to go to, I think I had given this example, that supposing you have to go see a sadhu, a swami in his own ashram, somewhere on the edge of the town, in the rear of the forest. So there's no clear address. It's not as though the GPS cannot also take you there. Because even in GPS, if they will say private road unknown, something like that. So what you have to do is to ask somebody. And you start asking people, they will not also just say, okay, you go 400 feet this way, you turn right, and then you go 200 feet that way, then there are some steps. That doesn't happen. They will say, well, I think I know where he is. It's in that direction. And so you kindly take this road, and when you go to the first stop sign, there is a gas station. Please ask the gas station guy, and he might be able to direct you further. So this is called vichara. So vichara means visheshena charaha. Charaha means to move, to travel, to make progress. Is called char, from char. And so that is chara. But vichara means careful. You have to take notes. You have to almost take your notebook out and say, okay, now he said this, that there will be a gas station. Yes, there is a gas station. Then the guy says, oh, yeah, it's still about a mile and a half from here, and then you'll come to this guy. He says, I've been there once, and I think there is this huge tree, and on the tree there is a fence around it, and at that point you turn left. Like that. There are instructions on it. This is called vichara. So similarly in the Mahavakya vichara, it means you have to think about it step by step, as we will do today. And so this is what it means. So the verse number 11, which is Atmanam Aranim Kritva Pranavam Cha Uttari Aranim Jnana Nimarthanabhyasat Pasham Dahati Panditaha. So let's look at the word meanings first, and then we will put it together. So Atmanam here doesn't mean Atma, the pure consciousness that we are. It doesn't mean that. Here Atmanam means the I sense, the ahankara, the jiva. This is me. So the I sense means the particular person who wants to be free. So the particular person means that a particular person who is of a certain age, certain gender, certain knowledge, that person, a particular person. This is what Atmanam here means. It doesn't mean the pure consciousness which pervades all of us. Not yet. That will come later. But this means the person who is attempting to be free. This is what Atmanam here means. So this is given by the word I sense. So the I sense is a kind of a reflected I. Just like, for example, you have a lighted bulb, which they're showing. They are lighting myself, so I can be visible to you. So the lamp is the light sense. It's a sense of the electricity. It is a conversion of the electricity in a particular form. So similarly, the I sense is the conversion of the consciousness in a given form. We can take this example that a room space is the so-called conversion. There is no real conversion, but the sense of the room space. If the room space had some consciousness, it would say, me. I am this room space enclosed by these walls and the ceiling. So that room sense is equivalent to what's called the I sense. So this is the Atmanam. Aranim is a technical word which we will explain in a minute, but it means the lower block of wood. Kritva, having made. Pranavam. Pranavam means Omkara. Om is called Pranava. Om. And it is the word for for Brahman, the one that we are seeking. We will see how we are seeking the word Brahman later. But right now, Pranavam, making the Pranavam Uttara Aranim. There is Aranim, which is lower Aranim, and Uttara Aranim means the upper block of wood. So there are two blocks of wood, one here and one on the top, as we will see in a minute. And Jnana Nirmathana Abhyasat. Abhyasa means practicing, repeating. It's called Abhyasa. Nirmathana means churning. Jnana Nirmathana means the churning of the thoughts, of the application of knowledge, of inquiry, a deliberate inquiry. It's called Jnana Nirmathana. And by the constancy of Jnana Nirmarthana, now we will see that. Pasham means the bondage. So anytime you like for example, when you have it's called the leash. I think that's a great translation for the word pasha. So you can see people walking their dogs. So pasham is the dog leash. Is the dog leash. Dahati, burns. It burns. Panditaha, the learned one. So these are the individual words. And now let's look at the overall sentence. By making the individual I sense as the lower block of wood and Brahman as the upper block of wood, and by repeatedly churning by the rod of contemplative inquiry, the wise burns all bondage as a result of the knowledge obtained by the churning. This is the overall sentence. Okay? Right, so to introduce this topic, Swamiji has made a very good point here. He says that, really speaking, up to now in the 10 verses that we have already covered, the truth about who we are and where we're supposedly going. I say supposedly because we are not going anywhere. This is a very peculiar journey where it is really more of a waking up to who I am rather than any travel. So for example, when you wake up from your dream, there's no travel involved. You don't have to get up from your bed and then wash your face or, brush your teeth or anything like that to ward off all of the dream. It just goes. Poof. So it is really a waking up, but a lot happens. I mean, on the dream, you may be having a lot of problems. There may be people are chasing you and you are trying to escape them or whatever. And to go from there to a nice, safe place where you are lying down and you are comfortable and so on. It's a big journey. from the journey, from the being chased by people and you are in danger of being caught up and so on, the fear that of it, to a very beautiful place where you are nicely lying down. It's a big journey. But this journey is not is not to be traveled by any physical means. It means you are right there where you are. Exactly the same situation is that this journey of knowledge is kind of like, it looks like, oh, I have to do, then I have to do this, then I have to do this, and I have to study the Upanishads. This is exactly what we do. That you please, you do some initial, just study some introductory book, then you have to go get some other book, then you have to get another book, then you have to attend some more classes. It's kind of like a journey. It is a journey. Really speaking, at the end of that, the same person who might have thought that I am in trouble, I've got problems, and so on and so forth, when you understand what's going on, your problems become poof, they disappear. The example of the snake, the rope and the snake is a beautiful one. That the snake just disappears back into the rope, becomes nice and safe. You don't have to worry about being bit by it. So similarly here also, this is a journey without any physical travel. It is a question of waking up. So this has already been communicated to you. Finished. So this is what is called Shravanam. So Shravanam means listening to a person that seems to know what this is all about. This is what Shravanam is. So really speaking, you should now feel free, because the Shravanam says, we have done all of this already, starting with na karmana na prajaya dhanena vedanta vijnana sunishchitarthaha hrit pundarikam virajam vishuddham vichinti madhye vishadam vishokam sa brahma sa shiva. All those kinds of things which say you are the whole thing. My dear, you are not just a jiva, you're somebody who is completely different than that. Wake up to it. This has already been told. So one should feel free by now. If you still don't feel free, we understand. Because only the very capable personalities will grasp it the first time. So this is interesting. This is called Uttama Adhikari. Adhikari means qualification. So qualifications come in 3 different levels. Uttama Adhikari, Madhyama Adhikari, and Adhama Adhikari. So Uttama Adhikari means the superior student. Adhikari here means one who is attempting to understand. The superior student, the intermediate student, and one who is unprepared. So there I wouldn't say inferior. So fully prepared, medium prepared, and unprepared. So just like, for example, you cannot talk about sophisticated subjects to a toddler because it is unprepared. Maybe a teenager, maybe, but even there, not really. But a person who has studied the subject matter, who's an adult, Like you took at quantum physics or something, you have to take on all this mathematics, physics, and so on, and then slowly you become very qualified. There, if you give the E is equal to mc squared, it is immediately grasped and says, yes, I can see it. Others means not yet. They will, but they have to come up to the level of understanding. So this is why they say that in the teaching of Vedanta, the Uttama Adhikari are very few. Very few. You might get a glimpse of it, and then you have to clarify it. So that's still an Uttama Adhikari. Madhyama Adhikari is where you teach classes and the person may not get it but wants to learn more because there is something there that you want to pursue. You don't reject it always. And I can see this, when I talk to people, and many of you who have been students with me and so on. In general, I would say that the Madhyama Adhikari is a continuing student who kind of gets it, but not to the degree where you are done. Not yet. That'll take. This is what is called Jnana Nirmarthana Abhyasat. Then, what about the Adhama Adhikari? The Adhama Adhikari will be one who doesn't get it at all. You talk about Atma and how the ultimate goal and so on, and you say, I don't know if that's true. I just want to do some normal things, and this is not for me. Not for me. That means that the message did not even penetrate. Completely, you're not even close to it. So you are a spiritual toddler in that sense. And so that's the Astamadhikar. Anyway, so here, as Swamiji points out in the page 137, Uttama Adhikari is the most highly qualified person. Then the truth is grasped right there and then. But this person is very rare indeed. Very rare. It is said that that in the case of Ramana Maharshi, he already kind of from the preparation from the previous lives, he was so ready that when this truth was given to him, he immediately grasped it. And he gave up his normal life of going to school and so on and so forth, and he became a mendicant, and just studied, grasped it. So, very, very few people like that. For example, even in Paramahamsa Ramakrishna, Paramahamsa Ramakrishna, who is one of the truly great Mahatmas that has lived in the last 100 years or so. He also did not get it right away. There is a story, not a story, it's an actual fact, that he was very devoted to the goddess Kali and always thought of himself as a devotee of Kali. And in fact, he got some special powers. He could see things that others could not see. but he was still he was more like a yogi. He used to do a lot of yoga and upasana to the Devi, and he got some special powers. He could see things, but he was still a limited person. He thought that I have now evolved to having all these powers, but even with the powers, he was a limited person. And it so happens that there was a, a, a Mahatma who happened to come by. He had heard of Ramakrishna as a very evolved person, but he also knew that Ramakrishna was not a Mahatma. Mahatma means a one who understands that I am really nothing. I am in fact the unlimited Paramatma. I am not just the Jivatma, I am the unlimited Paramatma. The person who knows this clearly is a Mahatma. So this person, his name was Totapuri. So he's actually from the north, in the Punjab area, which is now part of Pakistan, as this history goes. So he was traveling throughout India, because the Mahatmas can go anywhere, from village to village, town to town. They are happy wherever they are. They just keep traveling and propagating their ideas and so on. He happened to come by, and he could tell that this is a very accomplished person, but he is not a jnani yet. It hasn't been taught to him. The Advaita Vedanta has not been introduced to him. So he caught hold of him and said, "Listen, I want you to be my student." And so Ramakrishna must have thought, who is this guy? But he also must have understood that this is a very great guy. And he says, okay. But he didn't get it right away. Didn't get it right away. It took him a while to really think through all of the truths revealed by Sri Totapuri. And finally he said, yes, I see who I am. And through his meditation and his practices and so on, his clarity was visible, and he became a great Mahatma and a teacher to so many people, Vivekananda as one of them, so many other people. But there also, you could say that he was close to being the Uttama Adhikari, but not quite there yet. So it is very rare, very rare. It takes a lifelong of learning to get to that point, and sometimes more than one life, even after the beginning of the end. So here it says that in order for such people, this is the Madhyama Adhikari. The Madhyama Adhikari has to be shown this again and again with different examples. This is what is called transitioning from Shravanam to Mananam. Shravanam means the one message itself is enough. You're done. You don't need to do anything. We don't believe in having separate meditations necessary after the Shravanam. No. The Shravanam itself is enough. Meditation is necessary if you don't get it. If the message is not there, then you have to start doing meditations, this, that, or the other. More than meditations, you have to really clear your own doubts. This is called Mananam. So Swami Vidita Atmananda says, there's verse 11 is presenting the same thing in a different way, and it should be seen that this is Mananam, not Shravanam, because the Shravanam has already been done, right? So now another method is given, how to do Mananam. To introduce Mananam, you have to also understand how one should clear one's doubts by thinking what should have been clear to me but isn't. This is the meaning of the word Mananam, and here it is given in the form of an example. Okay, the example is, this is an example from the traditional way of starting a fire for spiritual purposes. So they say that to start a fire, how do you start a fire? These days we have gas and you just switch it on. You have microwave, or you can even start a fire by lighting through rubbing a matchstick to a matchbox. This is how you start a fire. But in the traditional spiritual yajnas, you don't start a fire like that. You have to start a fire in a very natural, pure way. And in those days, what they would, and it's still being done today, it's not as though in those days, even though other sources of lighting a fire are still available, but this is still done that way. I have seen it with my own eyes, but Swami Viditatmananda ji, of course, is very familiar with it. So what happens is that there are two spherical pieces of wood that have been carved out. So there is a piece of wood and you carve it out so that it becomes spherical. So there's a sphere that is created. And so there are two of them, one on the upper side and one on the lower side. And in between them, you have a wooden rod. And so the rod is now churned with the help of a rope. And the friction of the rod along with the upper urni and the lower urni creates sparks. And so that spark is captured and starts the fire. This is what it is. And that fire burns through, that can be increased in size and eventually can be used to burn away any impurities in the yajna. So this is the example given. So here also it says, just like the traditional way of lighting a fire, you have to light the fire of knowledge. The fire of knowledge, what does it mean by that? Fire of knowledge means the one that shines enough light onto the truth so that your doubts, the darkness of the doubts is illuminated and eliminated. So really speaking, that is the issue we have. I think I've told you this at least a few times, that I remember having a conversation one time with Swami Dayanandji. So this is after we were finishing up our course. And if I recall, I hope I'm not exaggerating. So what had happened was that after the course, we had built this home, the one that we are staying in. And Swamiji would come and stay here quite often. Several times he had stayed here. And I believe in this place itself, right, almost like in this room, this is now in We built this home in 85, so somewhere around 85 or 1986, I remember having a conversation with Swamiji, and I said, Swamiji, I have been studying with you, as you know, for a while, and I'm very impressed by the teaching and so on. But I still don't feel free. Can you tell me what I need to do further? I remember my question as though it is just yesterday. And of course, Swamiji immediately told me, just clear your doubts. And I've never forgotten that. He wouldn't say that unless he totally meant it. He wouldn't say that unless that was the most important thing that he would point out to me. Because he always said, well, no, keep studying and do this or whatever. There could be dozens of other pieces of advice. But the piece of advice that he gave me was, clear your doubts. And by the way, Swami Maheshananji also makes exactly the same point, and also all the other acharyas, that really speaking, and I think this is important because initially when you are introduced to the subject matter, you feel you'll be illuminated right away. And you are to a certain extent, but not totally. And the antidote to this cannot be that you give it up and do something else. The antidote to that is to keep doing it by systematically addressing each points of the doubts that you have. Why don't I feel good? Why don't I feel free? Even when it is Shastra, and the Shastra helps you to clear your doubt. Anyway, clarity of the doubt is the most important, and the darkness and the doubt, each doubt is like a darkness. So this is my whole point, that the churning of this rod and creating a fire means the light of the fire. You can talk about heat also, but the light of the fire that clears all the doubts is the most important one. Anyway, that's the example given. So now in our life, he says, now we can understand this. Making your I sense as the lower ernie. Lower ernie means the piece of the wood which is holding this rod, and making Omkara as the upper ernie. You now think between these two. By churning all your experiences and your doubts and your thinking and your way out, this is what needs to be done. You are at this point here, and you need to go to the higher point of the Om, and you need to really churn the distance between them, so to speak. I'm just giving you just a general idea. Here, very interestingly enough, Swami Viditatmananda has pointed out, which is absolutely the truth, that in the Vedic, when the Vedic times were there, and it will come again through the yugas, the various yugas. Right now it is Kali Yuga, but it will come back again to it. And so this goes through the cycle. The Kali Yuga is where the the Vedic thoughts are not that prevalent. People don't know about it. Even in India, which is the very heart of the Vedic thought, it is not as well kept. It has, the attempt to have a secular country, and secular means having your own ideas. You don't have to go through the Vedic things. So things have really fallen apart. But at one time, the Omkara worship was the main worship. And it came later that Rama and Krishna and so on became very popular. But the Omkara Shiva worship was indicative of the purer form of Vedic thinking at that time. And it's still there, but it's not as prevalent. So the Om is a word which is the name of Ishvara. It's very interesting to, we can talk a little bit about Om just for a second. Swami Dayanandji had once said that, there are various names for God. So in Islam it is Allah. Allahu Akbar. Allah means the God is supreme. Akbar means supreme. The God is supreme. So the name given is Allah. Similarly, in all the other religions, there are different names for it. The name of God or Brahman is Om in the Vedic thinking. So the question is, why? Swami Dayanandji had made the point that really speaking, supposing you have to assign a name to God in any religion, doesn't matter. In any religion, supposing you have to assign an appropriate name to God, it would be Om. Why? Why do you say that? What's the justification for that? Because the Om encapsulates the completeness of life, the enormity of life, the width of it, the exhaustive nature of life, all in one word. How does it do that? Because it displays the entire set of life of a person in this one word. How? How can you do that? What is Om? So the word Om consists of 3 individual letters. A, U, and M. M does not have a vowel. It is a consonant, therefore it is really not a pronounceable syllable. The pronounceable syllables have to have both a consonant and a vowel. So you can say mo or me or mu, but not m. So that's the third element of Om. A, U, A plus U becomes O, but you can end it with so it becomes Om. Om. Not Om, not Oma, but Om. The stands for the waking state. Stands for waking state. Okay? U stands for, I just want to see, this is given in on page 142. So Omkara is what is called Akara, which is Ukara. Ukara are, when you say Kara, Kara means the form of it, a form, Ukara and Makara. So there you can say M. So A stands for waking, U stands for dreaming, and M stands for deep sleep. So this is very explained in detail in the Mandukya Upanishad. The Mandukya Upanishad really is basically to unfold the truth of Pranava, which is Omkara. And in doing so points out the completeness of one's experience. Because if you look at yourself, there are three, this is why a day is a very important measuring stick in our life. Because in a day of 24 hours, you have all three experiences. You have the waking experience, you have the dream experience, U, and you have the deep sleep experience, which is And then you come back to The whole thing is nothing but a repetition of Om. And Om is a visible experience. Visible experience means that you actually see some change, you see some experience, you see some transactions going on. All three experiences resolve into the silence of consciousness. It is held together by the silence, which is called amatra. So there are three matras. One is the amatra, umatra, and mmatra, representing the three states of experiences. They are states of experience. They're like three simultaneous movies going on. So these are matras, but all three matras resolve into amatra. Amatra means not a matra. Amatra doesn't mean zero. It means pure consciousness, which is the very basis of the three different states of consciousness. Right? So this is kind of like the basic electricity through which you can have lamp number 1, heater number 2, air conditioner number 3. The same electricity is in all three of them, even though have some differences. So similarly, the same silence, the pure consciousness, which is amatra, is in all three of them. So, the pure consciousness and its appearance as something which is visible completes the whole life. There is nothing else left in it. So this is the symbol of completeness, totality, ever-presence, called Om. So Swami Dayananji used to say that if you were to, supposing you say, there is a committee, this is called inter-religious committee. So the inter-religious committees are a laughing stock, really. It is, I think I told you this once, that I was roped into representing. This is why you find many of these interreligious conferences, Hinduism is not represented at all. I don't know what the complete reason is, but I was roped into one of these conferences one time in Palo Alto, I don't know, a number of years ago, 25, 30 years ago. Somebody said, we need a Hindu representative, and you have studied a lot. I think you will be a good person to represent Hinduism. And so please go. So that was my one and last experience, and I said, I am not going back again. So what I found was that, first of all, it was not really that well attended. There must have been about 20 people, all sporadic and, all looking at each other and saying what, listening to us. And on the dais, there was one Muslim guy, one Christian guy, one Jewish person, and one Hindu, which is me. And we were all talking about, this is what we talk about, this is what we are, and so on and so forth. And no relationship to each other. There was no discussion about commonality. People say that same thing, there's only one God, but it's my God, not somebody else's God. And so there was just nothing there. There was no, there were a couple of sporadic questions, no real discussion. I don't know if anything got out of it. I said, I am not spending any more time on these kind of things. So, so this Swami Dayananda used to say that if you were to form a committee to say, let us define a name which can be common to all the religions and represents the most accurate, complete picture of what God is. If you were to do that, you will come to Om. But, if you're a Muslim or someone, you will not accept this. You'll say, oh, that's just the Hindu one. It is really a common one, but anyway, that's a separate thing altogether. Okay, now we come to a very interesting, a very important discussion which starts on page 138, which under the topic, a word and its object cannot be separated. I think it's a very well presented topic here. So, this is what is called a word and a substance of their word, the meaning of the word. So in Sanskrit it is called abhidhana and abhidheya. Abhidhana and abhidheya. Abhidhana means a name, and an object referring to that name is called, object referred by that name is called abhidheya. So for example, the word table. So the word table is the abhidhana, and the actual substance that it refers to is called abhidheya. So this is the relationship. So abhidhana and abhidheya are linked together. And they are linked together by an understanding communicated by someone. Like, we have a 1-year-old toddler, granddaughter. And if I tell her, Sanya, this is a table. Sanya, are you sitting on the table? She would not understand a word of what you're talking about. She'll just mumble jumble, she'll smile or something and know nothing. What needs to happen is that her parents have to keep saying, Sanya, this is a table. Even this word, this is not clear in the beginning. But even that is, then you can do it with a hand. Table. And so she listens to it and the word stored in her memory. And then you can say table. So if you do this often enough, then the word and its substance become synonymous. Then you can tell Sanya, what is this? And once she learns how to talk, she'll say table. So this is how it is. So this is how we, when we go to school and colleges, as Swamiji has pointed out, we are introduced to a number of words with their corresponding substances. We learn about, gross objects like milk and table and so on. We talk about subtle things like love and happiness. We talk about, unknown things, diseases, this, that, or the other. All those kinds of things are done. So we have in our vocabulary a set of words that refer to different substances in our mind. This is what words are. Okay? Now, what about the word Brahman? So when we say Brahman, what do you get out of it? Because that connection between the Vastu Brahman and the word Brahman has not been made, it doesn't mean anything. Swami Dayananji, this was his famous example. He would say, I have in my hand Gagabugain. That word Gagabugain became so prevalent that we almost got to know it very well. He would say, I would have my hand Gagabugain. And he would say, can anybody please give me $10 and I'll give you Gagabugain. So people would say, I'm willing to give you $10, but at least tell me what I get back Well, no, I can't tell you that. It's just gagabugain. It doesn't mean anything. So the word Brahman is also like gagabugain. Though there is a word called Brahman, but what the substance is, what the object is, what this vastu is, I have no idea. So I don't have this connection between the word and its abhideya. So here on page 140, so this is on page 140, Swamiji introduces that the method of connecting a word to its vastu, I use the word vastu because the word object, yeah, we can use the word object for the time being, but for something which is, like light. Light is not an object. It is a vastu. It is something there, but not something you can grasp by hand. So anyway, so that is the abhideya and abhidhana reference. So when we say light, then some kind of a exposure and preparation and understanding of light and the word light and the vastu light has to be created. So now we talk about Brahman. So the word Brahman would remain meaningless unless some preparation is done to understand what it means. What is that preparation? In the case of the table, it is relatively simple because you have to bring a toddler and again and say, this is a table, this is a chair, okay? And then later on you can say a table is something which is above the ground and has a flat surface. Chair is something which is lower and it is available for sitting. All those kinds of things you can do later. But you can do a preparation by immediately pointing out this is a table. What is the preparation required for Brahman? So here Swamiji makes a very beautiful point really. He says the preparation for the mind, for the self-knowledge. Brahman means the self. It is the conscious me, the real me. That's what Brahman is. What preparation do I need for that? The preparation I need is called the purity of my mind. Antakarana Shuddhi. It means the subtlety of my thinking. Because right now, when I begin, I only can have gross things that I can grasp. But the subtle things requires, the more subtle the vastu is, the more subtle the mind has to be. Isn't it? So, if you want to see a rat, you don't need a microscope. But if you want to see a microbe, the sadhana has to be more subtle. And in order to see virus, you have to have things that are even more subtle and more clearly defined, more finely defined, finely there. So the method of inquiry is as important as the object of the inquiry. So here, the mind has to be prepared. And once the mind gets prepared to grasp the subtlety of who I am, then the word Brahman and the Vastu Brahman can connect together. In fact, this is why the word Om is so important. Because the word Om should reveal to you, even today's class that we just talked about, the U and Ma, should reveal to you the word and its meaning. But if this is repeated and made clearer and made without doubt, then by simply saying Om, and Om is the word for Brahman, by saying the word Brahman or the word Om, either one of them, what comes to mind is the pure self, the Paramatma. So that is the process that one we have to do that. So we should see that the word and its object cannot be separated. Very beautifully done, page 138. Then we will now go into the need to expose ourselves to knowledge again and again in order to build this relationship between the word and its object. So this we will continue on in the next class. So with that, I close the class today, and we will, I think, complete this verse. But do have a chance, if you have a chance, please review the text of Swamiji's on verse number 11 before the next class. Okay. So let me say that a prayer. Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om. Oh, so many of you are attending both the classes. This is just amazing how you are able to do this. Kirsten, all the way from Italy. attending both the classes. Wow, incredible. You have a lot of patience, and good to see you. Lots of others also, Amit and others. Keshav. The Banjaras, yes. So good. It's just fun for me to teach. Because to be able to communicate something that one sees is a very pleasant thing to do. One which is not visible without this exposure. To be able to communicate that um, is just very, very satisfying. So I really enjoy teaching, and so very nice to have you there. All right, very good. If there's no other questions, we will disband for today, and hopefully I'll see you next week. Om.